Hi, folks. I hope everybody out there is doing well. And if you were wondering if I've just completely abandoned this thread of content, the answer is no. I forget when I did the last one, but it's probably been a couple months. I have been busy. We relocated. I am here in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. So there was a relocation around Thanksgiving timeframe, and then the holidays. And in the new year, I've been very busy with, knock wood, but onboarding a lot of clients to hit subscribe. So it's been a bit of a zoo over the last couple months, but I still want to do content about freelancing and indie business related topics. So here I am back at it, and I'll try to be consistent about this and get content out on at least somewhat of a regular basis. Maybe I'll shoot for 3 out of every 4 weeks of the month or something like that. Anyway, the thread of content that I do here, in case anybody's forgotten, including me, is a weekly Q&A series where I answer questions about freelancing and business-related topics. There's a lot of that on the YouTube channel and that I've published in Circle if you're watching it there. So this week, I decided to dust off the thread of content here with a question that somebody asked in the Hit Subscribe community Slack. And the question was, how do I get more engagement on content? And while this isn't exactly an indie business question per se, it's going to be pretty relevant because I think a lot of people, if they're going to start a substantial content creation channel, are probably doing that in some form of content marketing. And I think a lot of freelancers who might be creating content, either blog content or video content or on a platform like LinkedIn, people might be wondering, how do you get more engagement? So I feel like this probably blends in. It's also like topical and relevant here. The question that this person asked me in Slack. So I will dive into that and cover that in some detail here. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is channel my inner consultant. I mean, not say it depends, but like offer some caveats and scene setting here, I guess. Before I get into like tactics, so here's how to go and drive engagement to content that you're creating, I would suggest that you ask yourself why you want to drive engagement to content that you create. Now, I'm not suggesting that driving engagement to content that you're creating is a bad thing. It's more that can pretty easily be a vanity metric. So if you are standing up a blog, let's say, and you're writing, a handful of blog posts, and it seems like it's crickets in the comment section, it could just be that you're used to seeing comment sections on content creation venues with like lots of live active comments, and you wish that were you because it would tell you that people are reading, it feels good, etc. And it does all those things. But if that's the only motivation, I would call that sort of a vanity metric. It's not clear why you want that engagement. And the reason I bring this up too is that there is an actual real cost associated with having engagement to content that you create. Now, that might sound weird if you're not used to having a lot of engagement on your content, but for what it's worth, if for those of you that may not know me or my backstory, I don't post to it a lot anymore, but a blog, deadtech.com. In its heyday, I would post 3 or even 5 times a week content on that site, usually written content. I also did have a video or a YouTube channel associated with that. But anyway, in the peak of that content creation effort that I was doing, Dead Tech as a site was getting close to 1 million visitors per year. And I don't really remember at its peak what it was doing, but I certainly had 5 figures worth of followers. So like 10,000+ regular followers and 1 million visitors per year in the peak of this site. And the reason I mention that is, as you might expect, with that sort of following and readership, I got a lot of engagement. And this would be kind of on the regular, like regular followers and subscribers might interact with me on various pieces of content, asking questions, offering opinions. That was generally the good form of engagement. Then if something, say, went viral on like Hacker News or Reddit, you would get an influx of a lot of people commenting on the blog. And that wasn't always the best. A lot of people with a lot of strong opinions about things. But the gist, what I'm getting at here is the more you get that kind of engagement on the regular, if you are averaging 10, 20, 40 comments per blog post, for instance, the curation effort of that gets pretty intense. So especially if you're creating content that might be provocative or controversial, or you're getting an influx of commenters from an aggregator like a Hacker News. You're going to get the whole gamut of types of content, so comments. So some of the people will be thoughtful, asking questions, having discussions with you. Others are there and they're really angry and sending death threats, and you have to think about, you know, do I moderate this? Do I curate this? Because other people, maybe potential prospects are going to be on your site seeing this sort of thing. So you don't want just endless streams of swear words and invectives. So it becomes kind of this moderation and curation game that can take a fair bit of effort. Layer into that, depending on the channel that you're in, you're also going to get spam, people that are going to do link building spam, things like that. You're going to have to curate that as well. So I don't want to belabor the point here any more than I already have, but it is a non-trivial amount of effort, especially if you build up a pretty significant following in the channel. So before you incur all of that effort, which can come about in sort of boiled frog fashion, you should ask yourself, is it even going to be worth it? In my case, on a lot of sites I've built over the years, I started to just turn off commenting because I didn't find it to be worth it. It is, nice and flattering and often cool to get engaged commenters that are followers of yours that want to have discussions. I genuinely really enjoyed that paradigm, interacting with folks, having good discussions, but it is certainly not without effort, and it can get into no good deed goes unpunished territory when you get people driving by doing spam or demanding that you update some 10-year-old blog post that you've forgotten all about, etc. So before you do anything further, you should definitely ask yourself, if you actually want to incur all of that effort, do you have an actual business case for driving engagement and then managing it? In the case of the person asking this question, he did. His reasoning was that I'm not sure what platform we were talking about, but it sounds like it was one of the kinds of platforms where the algorithm rewards engagement. So if you're posting content on that platform, it sounds like the more people engage with it, the more it's going to show it to other people. So that does become a valid tactic, because that will help you for probably a pretty cost-effective way of going about it, increase the visibility of what you're doing. So fair enough. The other thing I would suggest is, in pretty much any case, driving engagement to your content is going to be a means to an end, meaning, so I take the case of the person we're talking about here. He wants additional engagement because the algorithm rewards that by granting more visibility to his content. So if you actually stop and think about that, the real goal, the first class goal, is more visibility to the content. And there are other ways to do that. Most platforms that have an algorithm that rewards engagement probably will accept your money to just show your content to people, meaning you can pay to boost your content. Now, there might be all sorts of reasons you don't want to do that, or you want to augment it with engagement, but it's worth thinking about also, what else could I potentially do to get to my end goal other than driving engagement? Okay, so consultant stuff out of the way, suggesting that you kind of get to the root cause and think about what you're trying to do. Let's talk about actual tactics to drive engagement. And in thinking about this, I made some notes. I'm going to sort of create a spectrum from white hat to black hat, I guess I would call it, or, from best faith to sort of pretty manipulative by the end. So buyer beware. As I get further along, these are going to be things that I endorse less and less, but they can be effective. So let's start out with just the white hat stuff. If you're creating content, either platform native content, so you're on LinkedIn, rubbing elbows with the thought leaders and producing stuff in LinkedIn to try to get people engaging with your content on LinkedIn, or other, channels, YouTube, for instance, where this video is going, things of that nature. The first thing I would say is table stakes for a white hat set of techniques is you should create valuable content. And what I mean by that is there's something in it for your audience to consume the content. Now, in developer marketing, a lot of times that's going to be tutorials. So you're going to create a tutorial. It's walking somebody through how to do something. If they read your content and then they know more about the subject or are able to go forth and do the thing, you have added value. There is another form of value that I would submit you can create. And this is probably more often what I would do, especially in the latter days with Dead Tech. I would consider a lot of that content that I created to be entertainment, which sounds weird because it was professional B2B stuff where I'm writing about, expert beginners and the various things that people, would often find cathartic and write into me about. The book I wrote, Developer Hegemony, was about sort of, a takedown of traditional corporate structures. And whether you're gleaning insights or whether it's a business book or not, that is genuinely the form of entertainment. It provides catharsis. The reader gets something emotional out of it. And that can also have value. Entertainment has value to the reader. So the first and foremost, table stakes, you want to make sure that you're creating something that adds value. And I would draw a distinction here with creating content just to create content because you're supposed to. And a lot of times when I see people like this, especially newbie indies that are like, well, I'm supposed to do content marketing. So they'll just kind of like read and synthesize and vomit back a bunch of stuff. Like, I went out and read the 4-Hour Workweek, and here's my dumbed down summary, wherein I hope you've just never consumed that piece of content. If you're just kind of paraphrasing other people and not really adding value, I guess you can do stuff like that and you can probably get engagement from it, but it would be outside of the realm of what I call white hat. So you want to make sure the content is creating some sort of value for the reader. But beyond that, you need to do a little bit more, because imagine that you're consuming a tutorial, for instance, like I've written, here's a punch list of things to go drive engagement to your content. You're most likely going to read my set of tips and then probably not engage with it yourself. You're just going to go read through them and say, well, that was cool. Thanks, dear content creator. Anyway, off to do this. So there is a lot of content that doesn't actually really warrant engagement. I mean, it would be nice if they found it valuable that they come and say, hey, great post, Eric. But that's not what most people do. And I would argue that if that's what they're looking to do, then sharing the URL with other people or throwing it a like on whatever platform or a clap or whatever is probably the more form appropriate thing to do anyway. So you need to think about creating content that actually calls for engagement. You need to create literally engaging content. And I don't mean that in the descriptive sort of evaluation sense of like, oh, this is engaging, the reader is engaged. I mean, you need to create engaging content in the sense that it invites the reader or consumer to engage. What I mean by that is one thing you can do, you see this on YouTube a lot, pepper in their requests for feedback. So a lot of YouTubers, if they're trying to make a living on the platform, will, say, hey, while you're at it, what is your favorite engagement tactic? Drop it in the comments below. You'll see that kind of thing all the time. They are giving you a way to engage with the content. They're asking for an opinion, and they're going to do it in a fairly specific way. It's going to be really easy for them to leave an opinion. So you're not saying weigh in with feedback. You're saying, do you like this thing that I just said? Say yes or no in the comments. You want to remove as many barriers to commenting as possible. So give people a very specific question that they can answer in the comments section. This is a common tactic to make things engagement. Generally speaking, anything you're doing explicitly to solicit discussion is going to be engaging content. So it doesn't have to be quite so tailored. You can do something like write a blog post about, a design pattern or something, and then say, what are your thoughts on this design pattern? Do you use it a lot? Do you think people should or shouldn't use it? Do you see it abused? You could put like a list of discussion questions at the end of the content or something like that. But generally speaking, you need to invite consumers of the content to comment, and you need to make it very clear to them that you want their comments. Please, by all means, leave some feedback, offer some opinions, etc. So you want to make it very clear that you are looking to make this a group effort. You want their opinions in the comments. You want to have a discussion, or maybe you want to solicit opinions about what topic you should cover next. You'll see that a lot in videos, in written content, like, hey, I just finished up my series about X. What other series would you like to see? Here are some options, that type of thing. So I guess most white hat way to do this is to create valuable content, but also create that content with the idea of it being a catalyst for group and community discussion. If we get into a little bit grayer hat territory, I mean, I guess depending on the format, You could think about creating content specifically for engagement. And there's really nothing wrong with this, but like, let's say that you're in maybe a more long form content creation platform or something like that. You're going to switch it up and maybe create something that is like a poll. So you'll see this on LinkedIn all the time. Somebody will go out and say like, what would you like me to create content about? Or they'll say something like, what's your favorite discussion forum, or what's your favorite publisher? Are you a Manning person, or whatever else? O'Reilly. So you create some content and you interleave it with your other content, where that content exists solely to be a poll or to serve as kind of a discussion starter for the community. In that thread of content that you're creating, you're then acting more as a facilitator. I don't really consider that gray hat, although if the only reason you're doing that is to get more eyeballs and to get the algorithm to reward you, I like that tactic better if you're actually doing market research or something, if you actually want those people's opinions because you need them for something, rather than just, I'm going to capitalize on the fact that people like to vote in polls or whatever. So that's kind of where I'm coming down with that, as being a little bit gray hat. Another more gray hatty thing you can do is clickbait. So, I mean, I guess depending on the degree to which you do this, but leading with provocative opinions. So it's one thing to create a tutorial about how to use the singleton design pattern. I'm drawing from my own experience in code-based assessments and stuff. So I could do a tutorial about the singleton design pattern, or even a roundup of like uses and abuses. Where is this useful and where is it not? If, on the other hand, I really wanted to drive engagement, I might think about framing one of my opinions more provocatively. So I am of the opinion that the singleton design pattern, its borderline use is abuse. I have almost never seen a good use of that design pattern anywhere. So just about every time I've ever seen that in the past, it is serving as a conduit for global state that snarls up your program. So I might state that, saying something like the singleton design pattern is actually an anti-pattern, or nobody should ever use the singleton design pattern. The key thing here that you're doing to drive engagement with this tactic, with clickbait, is you want to make sure that people can form strong opinions and will start expressing themselves without actually reading your content. That is what triggers things to proliferate across channels, and it invites people to weigh in with often angry comments without actually needing to read the content. So this is getting more gray hat. That's the essence of clickbait. Part and parcel with that is you go out of your way to be a contrarian. And if you're doing that, I would very much encourage your contrarian opinions to be grounded in experience and to add some form of value. Otherwise, it gets pretty transparent. You can tell when there's a new content creator who's trying to build an audience, or at least do engagement bait of some sort, where they're like, hey, Agile sucks and DevOps sucks and all that. And like, they have 0 other posts and 0 followers. And you're like, okay, I can see what's going on here, troll. So if you're going to be a contrarian, you can't just do that. A deliberate edgelord is, you see that coming from a mile away. So if you're going to engage these contrarian hot take type topics, you need to do so in a thoughtful way, and you need to have some actual validity behind these opinions. Another kind of gray hatty thing that you can do is, in most platforms, other than like your own website, so like YouTube, LinkedIn, or whatever, you can deliberately seek out people with large reach on the platform and respond to their takes or mention them, especially in a contrarian capacity. So if you have somebody that has a large following that is like the master of the singleton design pattern, and they've written about why it's great, you could quote them and offer up contrarian takes about why it isn't. That might bait them into replying to you, at which point their audience is going to see you and your take. You can do this in more benign ways as well. So something you'll commonly see is people doing roundups of like, here are some awesome people creating smart content. Here's my list of my 10 favorite developer tools, content creators, and you tag all of them. Why do you do that? Because when people are tagged in a flattering light, they're probably going to share it to their audience. So these are all tactics that you can deploy. I'm calling them gray hat. because to varying degrees, there's nothing wrong. You might be creating valuable content, promoting people. It's fine to do that. It's just that if you do that, it can come off as pretty disingenuous. It can be pretty disingenuous and manipulative if you're really only doing that to kind of game the algorithm and sort of trick people into resharing, etc. The last thing I'll mention is things that to me are in pretty black hat and questionable territory, but you could deploy these as tactics. They are, in fact, tactics. One is create rage bait. So I guess there's a fine line between contrarian takes and just rage bait. But rage bait is when you, go into a forum of Star Wars lovers or something, and you say, like episode 4 is the worst, episode of Star Wars. Usually what distinguishes rage bait is you might not even have that opinion. You might not have that opinion strongly. You're just going in and you're dropping a bomb where you know that the people consuming it are going to get so angry that they can't help but comment on it. Typically, you'll see this with in a lot of forums where people will express noxious or like toxic political opinions that they may or may not even hold, but it's just designed to get a lot of people angry and commenting. I don't like that as a tactic. It's effective. You can create engagement baits of other varieties as well. So just generally, you see a lot of low value stuff. I don't see it as much on LinkedIn anymore, but those things where they post like an order of operations math post and they're like, what do you think the answer is? Or they post something that's like, 9 out of 10 Mensa candidates can't get this right. Can you? It's just crap that's designed to trick you into commenting. It's kind of psychologically manipulative, that kind of thing. It works. It gets engagement for your channel, but at what cost? I wouldn't do that. It's a bad look. It's manipulative. Another thing that you can do, if you're pretty cynical about it, deliberately insert mistakes into your content. Create a blog post that's all about like, I've been to all 48 US states and here are my favorites. What do you think people are going to do? They're going to absolutely race into the comments to point out that there are, in fact, 50 states in the US, not 48. So these are the types of manipulative things that you can do to drive engagement. It's really understanding human nature. The XKCD comment where people can't resist that somebody is wrong on the internet. If you understand those dynamics, you can create things that are designed to manipulate people into being unable to help themselves, but to engage with you. I don't care for that myself. It's manipulative and I don't like that, but it's also, it doesn't have the kind of energy you want to bring to your content marketing apparatus if you're doing B2B. I mean, it just looks like things that are designed to trick people into giving up credit card. Like it looks scammy. So I wouldn't do those things. But I don't think probably most of you consuming would be doing that anyway. So I'll walk back a little here to conclude. Buyer beware if you do that stuff. But I think by and large, what I would recommend doing is making the core of your approach be how do I create value? But then how do I also intersperse the creation of that value with things that invite feedback from the audience and community? If that kind of functions as your true north, I think you'll do a good job of getting engagement in a potentially algorithm friendly way, but without selling your soul to do it. And finally, I'll close out here with the recommendation that you should set a kind of a time horizon at which you're going to create content in the channel and stick to it. And what I mean by that is if you're engaging white or ever so slightly gray hat tactics, you are going to need some time before the algorithm builds up rewarding, the channel builds up rewarding you with engagement. You're not going to go create 2 blog posts and suddenly have all kinds of engagement. You're not going to create YouTube videos and have all kinds of commenters. It just won't work. So you need to set a realistic time horizon for engagement goals where you say, all right, I'm going to create content on the regular for the next 6 months or 12 months. And by the end of that, I expect that my visibility metrics will be higher. I will get some number of engagements per post. But up until then, anything I get is gravy. And I realize that I'm going to have to put in the repetitions here and do a lot of content creation in the channel. So hopefully that is helpful for some of you watching out there. And yeah, it's good to be back in the saddle. If you have questions, hey, I'm going to do the thing I was just talking about. If you have questions and you're watching this on Circle, I could always use more ideas for questions that freelancers and indies have. If you are watching this on YouTube, drop it in the comments. Please engage. It would make this post so much more powerful, or whatever, the YouTube video, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, I hope that helps some of you, and I will catch you all next time.